Okay, so I want to just quickly talk about the rule explanation, rule application paragraphs of the legal writing memo. And the reason for doing this is because these are both very important components of IRAC. So you have the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. And we're talking about what the rule is, explaining it, rather, and then we're talking about the analysis behind that, the application. How's that applied to our client's facts of case? I think this is better explained through the acronym CREAC instead, which is conclusion, rule explanation, application, and then conclusion, or rather analysis and then conclusion. But when it comes to writing memo, those two terms can be considered interchangeably. Anyway, so the rule explanation is where you take the facts of precedent case and you make it so that those facts are all trying to outline what the rule is. So you have an issue, so you have your elements, and then you have an issue, and then you've got your explanation of how this precedent has met this element in the past. And you're looking at all those factors just to see what is relevant and preparing your reader, rather, to apply it to your specific client cases. And that's really where the rule application is going to come involved. So you've explained the rule, you've outlined the guiding factors, the facts of precedent case, and you've said what the court held based off of those facts. And now you're going to apply those facts to your client. And there are a couple ways that you can organize it. You can organize it either by issue, or you can organize it by party. So if you organize it by party, and you just take the guiding factor, you take the party for your client, and you're like, okay, here's how the party is likely to meet all of these guiding factors. And then you take the defendant, and you're like, you take the opposing arguments, and you're like, okay, here's how the opposing party is going to frame their arguments based off of the guiding factor. The way that this organization differs from issue/component organization is that you're trying to sort it by guiding factor. So you introduce the guiding factor, and you take it one at a time. So one guiding factor is like, okay, so here's how party 1 is going to try and argue this factor. Here's how party 2 is going to try and argue this factor. Then you move on to guiding factor number 2. Here's how party 1 is going to try and argue it. Here's how party 2 is going to try and argue it. And then you move on to number 3, or however many more it is, following that same format, and then you conclude. And the reason why this application is so helpful is because, this is really where the meat comes into the case, where this is actually your client, and you want to focus on your client. But you can't focus on your client until you've set up your reader for success in knowing how the rule is going to actually apply to your client. So that's the rule explanation and the rule application. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Law Schoolers. Before I let you go, there are 4 things I want to say. The first thing is, if you enjoyed these episodes and if you enjoyed the website, I would invite you to go and join Law Schoolers Pro, and you can do that by going to lawschoolers.com/join. It's a way for you to support us, but there's also a lot of features there that I think you will enjoy. Second thing is that nearly all of our episodes are unedited. The only ones that aren't are pre-law materials, and the reason for that is so you can actually see the legal material in its raw form as I'm learning it as well. The third thing is that the information contained in these episodes are specifically only for educational purposes. They're not to be used as legal advice. And with that, the fourth thing is, if it is used as legal advice, we are not liable. That is, Law Schoolers is not liable for any legal outcomes. Thank you again for enjoying the show. Have a good one.